So I am James. I lead business development at Quantum. We are here, as we've just been told, we are here to talk about really the evolving consumer trends, the evolving consumer landscape, changing motivations and attitudes and behaviours. Particularly as it says about, I think up there we go, we talk about the rethinking retail, the new normal, but actually we're going to go beyond retail. Obviously, I'll hand over to these guys in a minute to introduce themselves, but really what we're looking to discuss is kind of, give you kind of guys, I guess, a bit of kind of inspiration about not just how to ride the storm, but actually how to succeed in this current storm that we are facing at the moment. So hopefully it's going to be a fun session, lots of interesting, insightful commentary over here, and you'll enjoy it as well. So yeah, over to you. So Louise, or Lou, sorry.
That's all right. I'm Lou Pollitt. I'm Category and Insights Director at Lucky Saint. We're the UK's #1 dedicated alcohol-free beer brand.
And I'm Sarah, so I'm Head of Insight at a company called Distill Ventures. So just a bit of background is Distill Ventures is the world's first drinks accelerator. So we invest in alcoholic and non-alcoholic spirits brands across all stages of growth.
And I'm Debbie, I'm the founder and MD at Quantum. We're a brand activation agency working activating in the on-trade, off-trade and third space for just over 20 years now.
So that's us. Kind of interested to know a little bit about who you guys are as well, because obviously we can take this conversation in different ways really. So first of all, how many of you work brand side? Okay, and the rest agency? Yeah, okay, good stuff. And when it comes to size, would you suggest that you're big brand, big agency? Or hands up if you're big, hands up if you're medium, hands up if you class yourself as small. Okay. Bit of a mixed bag here. Okay, so we'll crack straight on with it. So, we don't need to sort of talk in much detail. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the world really at the moment. So I guess my question to you guys would be, have you seen a shift in consumer behaviour? Really? And I guess if so, what is that shift? Louise, I'll go to you first.
Great. So for us, obviously, as an alcohol-free brand, the biggest thing we're seeing is this moderation becoming mainstream. So alcohol-free is not just about teetotalers or designated drivers anymore. It's something that we're all considering more and more. Looking after your own health is gaining a lot more kudos, and we're seeing statistics now at 77% of consumers looking to moderate. I don't think I've met anyone yet that says they're going to drink more next year, and that's a fundamental change from where we were even just a few years ago.
And from our perspective, so we invest in non-alcoholic spirits, so we are seeing the same trends. Actually, some research that Cam came out with Lucky Saint a few days ago was around a third of pub and bar visits being non-alcoholic now, which is obviously a huge shift. But the other area for us is we invest in luxury spirits. And actually what we're seeing is the definition of luxury has dramatically changed over the past few years. So it's gone from, if you think of what luxury was, sustainability was super aspirational, quality was the big marker, whereas now people are looking for things like community, emotional connection, authentic brands, and that's what's seen as aspirational, and a brand that you want to wear, you want to drink, and you want to eat, and that's really changed the brands that people engage with.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about low and no alcoholism, it's a bit of a shift from people, the perception that not drinking is what you do, to more conscious consumption. So moving away from being, a drinker or not a drinker, but to somebody who's mindful about what they consume, when they consume, how they consume, and who they do it with. And so we're seeing brands really needing to think carefully in that space about how they activate, who they talk to, and the ways that they do that that will cut through a fairly cluttered environment.
Yeah, that's interesting there. So can we talk a bit more about the sort of, I guess, the moderation kind of choice angle? I mean, again, is this something that you think has changed dramatically recently because of COVID, because of the cost of living, or is it just, do you think, a wider trend?
Yeah. I think it is part of a wider trend, and I think what we're seeing is that different generations are approaching it in different ways. So younger consumers are more likely to moderate by drinking less on the occasions that they are drinking, and that's perhaps related to the kind of social media presence and wanting to make sure that everything that gets put out there is how they want to be perceived. older consumers, potentially maybe doing it slightly more for health reasons. They're more likely to be cutting back on the days that they're drinking. But for us, it's about turning that into something positive. So it's not just a beer minus, it's a positive choice to have a Lucozade.
And I think that COVID has made us all sort of experts, particularly in the drink space, which is where we work quite a lot. So we've learned a lot about what we're drinking, why we're drinking it, flavour profiles, what cocktails we're drinking and how to make cocktails. So I think consumers are, and I think that's leading to premiumisation. So consumers are really wanting to buy into premium brands. So whilst we see people drinking less, we also see them drinking better a lot and seeking out brands that are different because they're connoisseurs now. They see themselves as being connoisseur. Knowledge is power. So brands that are educating, I think, are winning. And I do think that's a lot to do with COVID. And we also see that as a result of COVID and changing working patterns, the patterns in the off-trade are really different. So, it used to be about a big Friday night, a big Saturday night, but actually, it's more about midweek now. The trends are shifting towards what happens on Tuesday because everyone has to be in the office on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So midweek consumption is more prevalent now, and it's not about massive Friday night. So it's sort of evening out the peaks and troughs that were in the off-trade, albeit it's still a tough environment for brands and on-trade operators to be in right now.
And to your point, actually, on being connoisseurs, because I think a lot of us can relate to the idea of suddenly knowing how to make an espresso martini over COVID, having only ever made a gin and tonic. But we're definitely seeing that point around drinking less but drinking better, meaning that premium brands still can really cut through because people are so much more engaged in things like ingredients and that quality, but also looking across, like I was saying earlier, at brands that are delivering on those sort of values that matter a lot to consumers, whether that's around sustainability or diversity, other things. So there's still a lot of opportunity there as well.
So do you think there's been a conscious shift in how brands, or how consumers rather, are choosing to engage with the brand? So I guess if you're looking at it from a Lucky Same perspective and some of your brands at Distill, again, what do you think of what are the ways that I guess this choice is shifting, is changing in terms of how they're interacting, how they're kind of buying you, seeking you out, let's say?
I think it's really difficult for brands to be all things to all people, to do the right thing in every single space, from sustainability to diversity and so on. We want to be a really inclusive brand. One thing that's really helped us at Lucky Saint is the B Corp accreditation. So that's given us a framework to work with, to know where we're doing well and where we can do better. But I think the other thing that is, to your point around authenticity, knowing what you stand for and sticking to that, it's definitely made my life a lot easier working for a dedicated alcohol-free brand than, say, previous points in my career trying to sell in Whole Foods and sugary biscuits to the same buyer. It's a kind of clarity of purpose that's really helpful.
No, I agree completely. And because to answer your question, James, I think people have changed how they choose their brands, but authenticity has to be the red thread. Like what we ask our brands to do when they join the portfolio is answer the question why the world needs them, and really think about their consumer and what they need from like an attitudinal perspective, not just targeting something like Gen Z, but staying true to that cause, which might be how you show up, where you show up, but not feeling tempted to divert away from that, because authenticity will be, your sort of superpower in terms of your success.
And I think it's up to the brands to think differently as well. So you've got to move away from the traditional marketing of what do our consumers think and want, and it's from a brand perspective, it's now how do we need to make consumers feel, and it's all about experience and uniqueness and niche being the new normal. So you have to do differently, and the kind of old marketing rulebook is thrown out of the window because there are limited brands. If we're talking about the on-trade and off-trade and convenience and supermarkets, there's less space and there are more brands. So to really set yourself apart, you have to be disruptive, and it has to be about building an emotional connection rather than just the fundamentals of marketing, the principles of marketing evolved.
And I guess do you guys see that as well? I guess do you see that the role of brand has changed considerably? Do you have to be a force of good? What's the kind of your take on that as well?
I think because obviously we invest across a lot of brands. There's about 30 brands in our portfolio, and all of them have different stories to tell and a sort of consumer in mind when they're telling it. And I think that storytelling has become a much bigger part of what people are engaging with, and authenticity and that emotional connection. And people are just looking to be part of a community, and that community can now be much smaller. You're not looking for a celebrity to tell you what to buy and be part of a massive group. You're looking for that small group with an emotional connection to you.
Yeah, I think for Lucky Saint, we've just opened a pub, for those of you who don't know, near Great Portland Street. And our founder, Luke, always talks about that as the kind of physical manifestation of the brand, and that's, I guess, the essence of what we want to be. It's really inclusive. Yes, we over-index in alcohol-free options, but it feels like everything that's great around the traditional pub, just doing it in a slightly different Lucky Saint way.
And there's a great example of brands like Brewdog doing things like that, you know, building their brands and then building a real life manifestation. It's like experiential. You know, it's the gift that keeps on giving because it's their owned properties, and they've been really disruptive in the way that they've presented themselves. You know, at the new Brewdog bar in Waterloo, you know, it's a workspace. They've taken on a little bit of the we work ethic. You know, they're not just saying, we serve coffee at 10 in the morning, so come and work from here. They're delivering a brilliant workspace that you know, comes head to head with places like WeWork. So I think, you know, brands have to be delivering that kind of uniqueness and thinking differently about the category and about the merging and blending of categories and the way consumers now behave and shop and work and live.
So believe it or not, we're nearly at the end. I've been told we've got a few more minutes, well, probably one more minute left, I think. I think you said 2, but I'm eking it out a little bit. So it's gone really quickly. Haven't got through half the questions that we wanted to get through. So obviously what I'm keen to do, you know, thinking outside of your brands that you work with, if there was one brand that you think is doing really well at the moment, in terms of everything we've talked about, you know, what would it be, or who would it be rather, and why?
So I think there are some really great brands out there that have gone for the St. B Corp accreditation, and one of the ones that I'm a consumer of is Strong Roots, so they do plant-based frozen food. I think there's a real opportunity in that space to land the sustainability message around the freezer in a category that's traditionally quite dull and boring. I think they're doing that in a nice way.
And for me, just staying true to spirits specifically, there's a brand called Three Spirit, which is a functional non-alc. And what they've been able to do, which is amazing, is like deliver sort of functional needs in different spaces. So they've got something called like a nightcap, which has real efficacy around helping you fall asleep, as well as things like a livener, which deliver on that kind of feeling you get from alcohol. So it's really delivering on like the emotional benefits of alcohol without the physical issues that come with it. So they've done an amazing job.
And I'm really enjoying Funkin at the moment because they are true challengers. They're so disruptive. Their pipeline and their innovation churn is so quick, and they're being really bold, really brave, acting like challengers that they are, and they're not afraid to take risks. And I think that those the brands that do that are the ones we're going to see winning, you know, in the coming months and years.
Cool. And I'm a big Lucky Saint fan, so my vote would be Lucky Saint. There we go. So I think that's all we've got time for, is that right? Yeah, so we are, or Lucky Saint as well. If you want to come and have a sample of Lucky Saint, if you've never tasted it before, you need to come over, definitely. We can be found in the Wine Alley, just opposite the Accolade Wine Bar. That's where we are. Anyone who's got any questions will be there as well to kind of come back. I think that we're going to all head back over there with the crowds. And so if you've got anything else you want to kind of talk to these guys about, do come and find us. But thank you for listening. Let's go on quick.
Nice. Let's give them a round.